Continuous line drawing is a great way to create loose flowers and add a whimsical floral aesthetic to your art. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own continuous line drawing flowers in pen and then add a watercolor wash to the drawings. Doing your own continuous line drawing is a very freeing experience because it means you don't have to draw perfect shapes and you're forced to let go of control and allow your art to emerge naturally. This really is a great way to relieve stress and have fun without the pressure of trying to create a realistic image. Okay, you can start off by loosely drawing the petals of a flower, the first flower. It's always helpful to have reference pictures of your flowers nearby so that you can get a general sense of the shape of the flower. But don't worry if you don't have a reference picture, you can just follow along with me. Continuous line drawing is when you draw a single continuous line without lifting your pen off the paper. This can be done with any type of pen. I like using a permanent fine liner so that the lines are nice and thin and I can apply a watercolor wash over the lines when I'm done with the drawing. Ballpoint pen or biro can also be very effective, and it's a really good idea if you explore using other pens like gel pens or felt tips. As you can see, my drawing technique for continuous line drawing involves me going over shapes of the petals and the flower to create definition and interest. These repeating lines also give the drawing a sense of movement and energy and prevent it from becoming too static, I find. Remember, there are really no rules with continuous line drawing other than trying to keep your pen on the paper, but if you lift it once in a while, just continue where you left off. As you are drawing your flower, you can vary the pressure that you are applying to the pen to create different effects. Lighter pressure will result in thinner lines, and darker pressure will result in thicker lines. You can also use different line weights to create different effects in your drawing. I sometimes like to use a very fine line for the outer petals of a flower and then work the line back over itself to create a central part of the flower. Working over the central part of the flower darkens that middle area. I found these dry thistles and I thought they'd be a lovely addition to my floral composition here. So I'm loosely drawing the general shape, the spiky leaves, and the thistle head. As you can see, I'm still using continuous line and creating the texture on the thistle head and the stem. And now I'm going to add some leafy part to the thistle, to the stem. For this flower, I'm drawing a carnation from the side and just loosely adding in the general shapes of the petals and going over the lines once again. My composition was a bit empty, and so I've decided I'm going to add some leaves or foliage to balance the composition, to create a bit more interest and to give it a really organic feeling. I'm adding some spiky leaves at the bottom. Okay, so once you've completed your line drawing, your continuous line drawing, you can go ahead and add some watercolor washes. Like the loose line drawing that you've completed, you can paint your watercolor wash in the same loose way. You can work quite quickly, and you don't have to paint the entire shape. You can leave out areas of white, specifically the areas of the petal that the light might hit the most. These would be the highlights of the petal. I like to get a very light color as a base, and then work into the wash with darker colors to create a sense of shadow and once again to create interest. I use my brush to add a bit more of the red, the crimson, to the outside of each petal. This outlines the petal, defines it a bit better. Now I'm going to work on the top left flower, and I'm using crimson mixed with quite a bright pink, just so that it's not the exact red hue or warm color as the central flower. Once again, working very loosely, dropping my paint in, allowing it to bloom in order to create areas of looseness and interest. My carnation is going to be a yellow. Bottom left flower, a little bit more of an orange color. The orange washes. You can see I'm leaving areas untouched, white areas. And working some of the more intense orange into the shadow areas. You can of course go back to your flowers once they have dried slightly and work in a bit more of the intense color in order to create shadow. So it's important to go back over your flowers because watercolor does tend to dry lighter. When it is wet, it appears quite intense, and as it dries, the color softens. For this flower, I'm going to use a similar red to the central flower and just defining the petals with the watercolor, leaving some areas white once again, creating that watercolor sketched effect. With this style of pen and watercolor wash, it really works beautifully for creating personalized artwork, birthday cards, Christmas cards, any sort of greeting card. And you can have a lot of fun with it. And it's a very freeing experience. So now I'm working on the thistle heads, adding some lilac to the heads themselves, a little bit of a blue, just a touch of color, because overall my aesthetic is very soft and I'd like to just keep it that way. Now I'm adding greens to the foliage and the leaves, an olive green and a forest green, the darker green to create more shadow and the lighter green to fill the largest part of the leaves and under the buds. For the thistle heads, I'm going to paint the leaves a dried out browny yellow, the touch of green, and eventually I will also add this to the crispy pointed leaves at the bottom of the page. And there we have it. Now you know how to create a continuous line drawing of flowers. My name is Dee. Hit that subscribe button now and watch this next video on how to draw a mushroom.